Okay, Super Monkey Ball. So I'm not quite sure what I want to do here, but there are so many things about this game that I think are worth talking about. And, you know, I suppose I might say that this game, with its lack of a complex plot and the fact that it's just, you know, people running on surfaces, it has something that a game with a plot doesn't have. I suppose it's almost as if whatever is being conveyed in this game is closer to the conveyance of a dream. It has more slightly non-verbal things going on that I would like to talk about. Yeah.
Normal mode. Ready?
So, you know, we begin in a green level, and it's sort of huge sort of jungle area kind of thing, mountains, big, wide. It almost, it looks sort of like a very, very wild greenery as well. These huge vines spiraling up. You know, in a few shots where you get shots of the actual ground, you see that it's extremely it's an extremely sort of bushy place. There, it's not a well tended to garden, right? But it gets nicely contrasted with the actual area, the play area, which is a very nice garden-like thing. There are little trees in their little plant pots, and there are decorative flowers. The grass is neatly trimmed, and so on. So we begin with this contrast of like well-tended to garden, human-y kind of garden, and wild, like canyon nature craziness. I mean, it's incredible the expanse of this place. And to me personally, there is something that immediately grabs my attention about this, which is that there are so many games that I like that begin this way. Mario games tend to begin this way. They begin in a green area. And that's always supposed to be like the safe tutorial area, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if many games have this trope exactly, but I think that, you know, I imagine most people would be able to recognize at least a slight trope. Sonic begins with green area. Kirby tends to begin with a green area. And I don't know, other examples. In these games, it's always as if this green area is, again, a safe starting point. Right? You start at the safe green area, and then you move forward to more dangerous, more complicated areas, right? To fire areas and water areas and stuff like that. But you start off at the green area, and that's the start. And in a lot of cases, these green areas are precisely a mix of like wilderness and nice tended to garden. Now, of course, I have to mention that the reason why it's a nice tended to garden probably is precisely because the gameplay sort of requires it, right? Because we need paths and walls and limits for the characters to move through. It can't be pure, chaotic, spontaneous nature. It needs to be slightly gridded in all these games. So, of course, that's one of the explanations for it being a garden. This game, what I like about it is that it does kind of show that the area where the character doesn't walk through is a wild area. Kind of suggesting to me in my, in my jump to conclusions kind of mode, that the area is a wilderness area, and that the garden aspect of it is a design requirement that probably has some meaning ultimately as well, if I wanted to find it, but that there is something about it that is just a wild greenery. Why are there, so many games, or at least a few games that do this, that begin in this way? Well, I think what I would like to suggest is, of course, first of all, I think that my mind inevitably goes to mythology and the Garden of Eden and stuff like that, right? That history begins at the Garden of Eden, and then things get difficult. There is a fall, right? Because these levels get subsequently more difficult. And fire levels and water levels and technology levels are always framed in these games as being spikes in the difficulty curve, right? You go up to these levels, so that this is again a safe paradise area, and then you fall towards difficulty, difficulty. But there's also a part of me that wants to say, well, all these games were made in Japan, right? What does the Garden of Eden as a biblical story have to do with that? Like, why am I using that to analyze a Japanese game? And I think that's a good question, because I think there is something about the Garden of Eden trope that maybe can be extended further back, in that I don't know enough mythology really to know whether there are similar Garden of Eden stories in other myths. Maybe there are. Maybe a lot of myths begin with a paradise, sort of paradise on earth, represented as, as a garden, as nature, and then move towards like a fall. I don't know. However, what I can see in the Bible story is that the garden isn't a city. It's not, it's not like it's probably got walls and stuff. I don't know how they describe it exactly, but there is a duality, I think, in these kinds of myths, where nature is considered to be, good, authentic, and then human life becomes artificial, and that's sort of what the fall is, right? That things fall towards an artificial state, human constructions and technology and stuff like that. Now, if that's what these sorts of myths are saying, then it seems to me that the choice to make the Garden of Eden a garden, the choice to make a garden represent the beginning, the origin, clearly could have something to do very simply with just the fact that, the judgment that these stories are making about what is good and what is bad is a judgment that they're making. But the choice of imagery might simply be based on the fact that first there weren't cities and then there were, right? So that first we had jungles and we were monkeys in the jungle, and then cities emerged. A lot of these stories tend to judge the cities as being bad or whatever, but I'm just sort of wanting to focus on the fact that the jungle is the beginning, I think, in a lot of these stories, and by extension, my assertion would be that it's the beginning in a lot of these games, because it's it literally is the modern human, pre-technology kind of place. So it's the beginning. It's the first level. The first level of history is a jungle, right? And that would... Well, again, I mean, there are problems with that, because I could say, well, that's shared across all of humans, regardless of which country they're from. I don't know. I mean, I suppose that, you know, there are also deserts. There are also all sorts of places on planet Earth that probably were part of the landscape and the aesthetic of that origin of history moment. But since I don't really know, you know, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say, I will at least make the suggestion that, you know, at the moment, that maybe even in deserts and places like that, that I get the feeling that maybe planet Earth was simply, you know, bushier in the past than it was now. Maybe that's not true, that there were just generally more trees and it was more wilderness. At the same time, maybe there is something about this green jungle trope that doesn't have necessarily to do with the origin of history and that has some inherent quality about greenery itself, about leaves and trees, that maybe there's something about vegetation that is being invoked here that has nothing to do with whether this was the beginning or the future of our history.
Ready?
In any case, I think the reason I'm interested in this game is because, well, a lot of it seems to fit into that story for me, because we're dealing with monkeys, and we're dealing with monkeys who are ascending up, right? And as they ascend up, more human structures begin to emerge. Like in this level, we have little houses, right? And it's still a very wild terrain, right? It's still like just jagged rocks, but there is like huge temple in the middle and little houses and stuff like that. And the theme of, you know, of ascent is very obvious in this game, because you literally are going up. Whenever you complete a level, you go up and up and up. So basically the entire game is just a monkey going up and up and up and up until it reaches paradise of sorts. But things get more complicated.
Ready?
Even the huge temple in the middle of this level, its design is evocative of ascent, right? Because there are big steps going up and up and up, leading towards a peak, right? This pyramidal kind of shape is evocative of what the game itself is doing. You're going up different levels towards the center of the mandala. And this is what the game is going to do, because you literally are going to reach the center of a sort of mandala palace at the end.
Ready?
And, you know, this area, I think in its English translation, is called Sky High. I can't remember its Japanese title now, but, you know, the floor is just clouds, basically, and these rocks are jutting out from the clouds. So it would seem at first glance as if the game is taking seriously the idea of ascent. You were on the jungle, and then you went up into the clouds, and you're in a place that is spatially above the jungle, right? And the clouds seem to indicate that you literally are going up in space. It seems as if the game's about to take that idea seriously in a literal sense, but it doesn't, because you end up going up into all sorts of other strange places. You go up into the ocean, for example, as if there were an ocean above the sky, and other things like that. And instead of that not making sense, it, for some weird reason, makes sense. There's something about it that starts to hint at the fact that there is something about this ascent that the monkey is going through that is symbolic. You're going up through different areas, and each area sometimes literally represents a place that is higher up, like this cloudy place, and other areas seem to symbolically represent a place that is higher up in comparison to the previous one. So it's something strange going on, which of course is reaches its climax at the end, because the last area, this sort of palace in the sky mandala, is, as far as I can tell, back at the literal same space where the jungle area was. We see vines, the same thick vines growing up it. Now, these vines weren't present here, for example, in the cloudy area. If those vines were going up straight from the jungle all the way across the sky towards this palace, then we would see those vines in every level, but we don't, right? So we begin at the vine level and we end at the vine level. Since that vine hasn't cursed through the whole game, what that makes me feel is that the final level is the same as the first one. The final level is the jungle. It's just that it's like a mandala version of the jungle in the sky. And so it makes me wonder, well, you know, you've started at one place and then you've ended at the same place, but a slightly more epic version of that place. Again, jumping to mythology, that makes me think of the hero's journey. It seems as if you started at one place, you ended at exactly the same place, but some sort of a transformation in your soul has happened, or something like that. Is this game doing something like that? Well, that palace in the sky is described as being a dream. So it's a precognitive dream in a sense, right? Because the main character has this dream, this vision of this palace in the sky, and then goes up towards that palace in the sky in reality. So that palace is a dreamlike place. It's like a dreamlike version of the jungle. That first jungle area is so realistic in a strange way, right? Especially the background. It's just trees. It's not the kind of trees you get in Mario games with like googly eyes or stuff. It's just realistic trees. It's just a jungle. But then you reach a sort of dreamlike version of itself, as if you were to start from the present moment and you go towards a future location, but that future location ends up being the same as the present moment, just its dreamlike counterpart or something. A dreamlike approach to the way in which you exist in the present moment, or something like that. So, the fact that this was a dream, it kind of suggests to me that this banana island in the sky is something that's inside of Ai's soul. Like, it's something about him, or, you know, the player in this case, that that you're going towards. It's a dream island, so it's inside your dream world, inside your inner world. It's just that it's becoming materialized as the final area. And all this mandala symbolism, so many circles in this game. Again, yes, game design, but I feel that there is a numinosity about the circles and about the mandala that you know, like Jung would say, does evoke a wholeness, a certain idea of wholeness, and therefore of, yeah, the hero's journey of kind of integrating the parts of yourself that you're not integrating, and therefore generating more of a whole sense of self, or existing within a whole or image of the self, or something like that. And then the sort of penultimate area kind of evokes this in ways that hopefully I would focus more on later, but that I think the last area before reaching Banana Island is literally yourself. It's literally an image of Ai, the monkey. So Ai is finally, it's almost as if we've always been navigating an image of the self. It's just that it only becomes aware in Ai's consciousness at the very end, right? At that point, Ai really sort of like has the experience of seeing that he is riding and circling around his self. And I think the goal to that area is even like on his head as well, almost as if, you know, he's seeing something, right? So several interesting things to contemplate in this game from the get-go. And I hope to make more videos about them. So yeah, thanks for watching.